So he's not quite sure whether they collected the dust that same day or a couple days after. But the point is they close the window so they prevent contamination coming in. In this dust sample, we see, again, these iron-rich spheres. So that rules out now that these spheres could come from cleanup where you're cutting through steel. This is the best sample we have, and I'd like to invite Tom Breidenbach and Frank D'Alessio to come up here. Do you hear Tom? Frank? Please come up, guys. I'll let them explain a little bit how they collected this. What I want to emphasize is that this was collected by Frank, as a student at a university, within 20 minutes of the collapse of the North Tower. So let me turn that over to Frank just for a minute, would you, Frank?
Hi. That morning, I was on the A train heading into Manhattan at a class early that morning, about 4 blocks from the Trade Center. I was on the last train that was allowed to, well, I was on the last train that stopped at High Street, Brooklyn Bridge. They informed us that no more trains were allowed to enter Manhattan due to a collapse. As I left the subway, there was a string of people coming from the Brooklyn Bridge. I followed my way onto the bridge. There's a mass exodus coming my way. Me and another girl were the only 2 people going towards Manhattan. I had a camera. I took a whole roll of photographs really rapidly. As I entered the Manhattan side of the Brooklyn Bridge, that's when the North Tower fell. Soot just came. We couldn't see. I fell. Then I was exiting the bridge. I scooped up a whole bunch of soot on the rail. It was piled up, sort of like snow, and then proceeded to head north towards the East Village, where I met my friend Tom.
Where did you put that?
Oh, I just carried it in the palm of my hand. Yeah. You know, it was history, show and tell. I knew that no one was really near there besides me. They weren't allowing people in specific perimeters. So it was it was just instinctively that I grabbed it. I was wearing a black button down. I was covered in soot. Yeah, I thought that would be something to hold on to, so I did swipe it from the rail. And then when I entered Tom's apartment, he was kind of shocked because I had it in my beard and hair and clothes, and I showed him the sample, and we immediately put it in a Ziploc, and he's held on to that since then.
Isn't that great? Say a word or two, would you, Tom?
Yeah, I'll just add that he came in and was covered with dust and showed me this dust that was in his hand, and we didn't know what to do with it, and I thought we were in shock, so we just put it in a bag, and I've been following 9/11 Truth closely for a while, and it wasn't until recently I watched a lecture of Dr. Jones's where he said we need more recent dust, so I got a hold of him and we sent him this sample. And I'll also just add that we later had gone down to see what was going on, and we were about 5 blocks north of Building 7 on the west side of the West Side Highway when about 20 minutes before it came down, we were told that they're going to bring it down. Remember, the gentleman about 15, 20 feet ahead of me turned around and said they're going to bring it down, and we were all looking at it and completely expecting it, and everybody's around us has our eyes just focused on Building 7 when it did about 20 minutes later just come down. So.
Isn't that amazing? Thanks. Let me ask you, gentlemen, did you add anything to the dust? Did you sprinkle it with iron spheres? Or
No.
You'll be asked that in court someday probably, but thank you very much. Okay, you hope so, he says. Thank you. Thank you, Frank and Tom. So, World Trade Center 7 was still standing when the sample was collected. There was no cutting yet of the steel, obviously. It's an uncontaminated sample, just what we've been waiting for, to confirm that this is not due to contamination. It's in the dust. Something happened during the collapse. Now, I announced last April that we saw spheres with aluminum. These peaks represent the elements present in this sphere: aluminum, sulfur, and iron. Aluminum and iron is a signature for thermite. Remember, it's a reaction between aluminum and iron oxide. And so in the sphere, liquid then, it was liquid at one time, formed a sphere, you see residue from the aluminum and, of course, a lot of iron. And if they add sulfur, then you see that, as you see here. Sulfur makes this molten metal cut through steel faster. It's not required, though. That thermite cutter, as far as we can tell, does not have sulfur added. It doesn't need it. You just blast through with that hot jet of molten iron. I talked about the fact that in Thermite, which I designed myself then to try to match what we saw in the World Trade Center, let's see, which is which, 15th of March, this is the Thermite. I did that after we had observed the content. You can see I got pretty close, aluminum, sulfur, iron in both cases. So I can make a Thermite easily that matches what we observed in the World Trade Center. Now, it's been 8 months, and we've analyzed hundreds of these spheres since then using these state-of-the-art methods. XEDS stands for X-ray Energy Dispersive Spectroscopy. That will be on the exam. XEDS will be on the exam. Okay, I'll make it easier for you. It's a method where we send electrons at the sphere, and X-rays come back, and the X-rays are characteristic of the metal or elements in the sphere. Mostly what we see now, that is, a lot of these spheres show this pattern. A lot of the iron-rich spheres, there's a lot of glassy spheres as well, but the iron-rich spheres often have, in addition to aluminum, see the aluminum peak, the iron peak, silicon, and of course oxygen in large quantities. You expect that because, for instance, aluminum oxide, also the hot iron will react in the air to produce iron oxide. And then potassium is very interesting, very characteristic. So I want to clarify or add to now the body of knowledge about these spheres.